Greetings and welcome to the Greene IPA Flint Solar public hearing. We're going to wait for our last people to sign in. If you haven't signed in, we have a sign-in sheet. If you'd like to speak, you need to sign in and check the box that you'd like to be called upon. And that's this line over here. We are recording this by Zoom, and we do have a stenographer recording. So I ask when you do come up to speak, if you clearly state your name and address and speak clearly, she'll be recording that for our minutes as well.
If we decide to speak after you start.
We'll give you a period at the end. I'll ask if anybody else would like to speak. So I'll give everybody a few more minutes to sign in. It's already recording, but
how you doing? Is he off? How do you feel? No way. Get some experience.
Those two lots will back up on each other. Both of them look at each other at the same time. So you can make sure that you can plants and stuff.
Oh.
Well, something like that, one case, because cancer golf course.
Yes, yeah.
Hello. So we're going to get started. My name is April Ernst. I'm with the Greene County IDA. Can you hear me? Greene. So when people speak, can you hear me now? Yeah. So I might have to hand this off to speakers as you speak, because that's the other option. My name is April Ernst. I'm with the Greene County IDA. I am joined by Paul Goldman, our attorney, Renee Shack, our consultant. I am going to read the public notice, a couple of housekeeping. If you need to use the bathroom, men's is to the left, women's is to the right, exit doors are in the back. We are recording. We have a stenographer on hand also taking minutes. So when you come up to speak, I'll call your name. We're asking that each person be limited to 3 minutes to speak. At the end, if there's other comments that need to be addressed, you can speak again at the end. So all persons wishing to officially be part of the record for this hearing, we ask that you state your name and address clearly and group affiliation, if any. I'll read the public notice. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing pursuant to Section 859-A of the New York State General Municipal Law as amended will be held by the Greene County Industrial Development Agency, GCIDA, on the 4th day of October of 2022 at 6 p.m. local time at the Coxsackie Athens Central School District Auditorium located at 24 Sunset Boulevard, Coxsackie, New York 12051. Flint Solar LLC, FMS, is a limited liability company constructing, owning, and operating a 100 megawatt AC solar voltaic PV facility being developed at the southern end of the town of Coxsackie and the northern end of the town of Athens. The GCIDA is proposing to provide incentives to the project in the form of a payment in lieu of taxes pilot, a sales and use tax exemption, and a mortgage tax exemption. The application submitted by the company and relevant supporting documents submitted to the GCIDA in connection with the project may be viewed by the public on the IDA's website at www.greenida.com. Inquiries about the project and the GCIDA assistance should be directed to April Ernst, Executive Director. The GCIDA will, at the above stated time and place, hear all persons with views in favor of or opposition to the rendering of financial assistance by the GCIDA for the project. Minutes of the hearing will be made available to the public and to the members of the GCIDA. So we'll be keeping the comment period open until October 28th at 4 p.m. You can submit to me by email. My email address is Ernst, ERNST@greenida.com, or you can mail it to the office at 45 Sunset Boulevard, Coxsackie, New York. All the information can also be found on the website. And with that, I will kick it to Paul Goldman, our attorney.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me? My voice, okay. So it's nice to see everyone tonight. We haven't had this many people at one of our public hearings in multiple years. I think the last public hearing that is this well attended was our Athens generating project hearings. So just for basic ground rules for everyone's information, it's a public hearing to give comment about the project and about the pilot agreement, okay? So some ground rules. We have a stenographer. Everyone knows what a stenographer is? It's the person in a courtroom that takes down the minutes. If you're going to speak, keep your voice up and speak slowly. Don't talk over each other because it makes a mess for the person who's the stenographer. And if you've ever read a record that's messy, it's not helpful for anyone. Okay, so I just ask everyone to kind of think about the person who's sitting there typing the document and give her courtesy. What we do at these public hearings is we take the comment back. Okay, you provide comment, we take it back to the board, and then we look at it. We'll write a synopsis of it. Sometimes we may not agree with it. Some things we may agree with. Okay, so it's to give comment, and we create what's called a record. Okay, a record is all the documents, including the paper documents, that are reviewed and analyzed. Okay, so the decision hasn't been made, but I just want everyone to know that that's the goal of it, is to make a record. So we have a clean body of everyone's comments and what we thought of it. Okay, so those are the ground rules. Now, we present that record to the board. And they review it themselves. They're members of your community. Okay, so just so everyone knows what that is. Now, one thing I'd ask is, what is a bad, at least in my opinion, a bad record is where everyone comes up and repeats the same thing. If you heard it or say it, have the courtesy for the people who are going to read it, because it's more effective of a presentation if you limit your comments to stuff that hasn't been said. So we don't need to say it 10 times. You can give it to us in writing if that's what you want to do. Okay? So does everyone know what a payment in lieu of tax agreement is? So everyone, okay. So the IDA can do three things. It can give out three forms of financial assistance. Through a mortgage tax exemption, a sales and use tax exemption, and a payment in lieu of tax agreement. Okay? And that is, that's what we can do. That's the limit of our jurisdiction. Okay, so in terms of a payment in lieu of tax agreement, it is intended, just as it sounds, it's a payment in lieu of real property taxes. It's supposed to go, and it's required by law to go to the taxing jurisdictions. Okay? It doesn't go to private corporations. It doesn't go to us. It has to go to the taxing jurisdictions. And that's what the law is. And I just kind of want everyone to understand that. Okay, so with that, why don't we call the first person and just kind of keep your voice up. I mean, this room is large, and the stenographer is going to try to take this down.
In the pilot program.
You've got, wait a second, it's not going to come out unless you go to the mic. Or take this one. I'll take it. And you got to give your name and, so. Okay.
Hello, I'm Barbara Vermel. I just wondered on the pilot program, who determines where the money goes? By
law, unless otherwise agreed, okay? Unless otherwise agreed is the operative term of the statute, it goes proportionately in accordance with the tax rates, the relative tax rates. That's my law. Okay. Okay, any other questions? Thank you, that was a good question.
Ken Gifford is our first speaker.
Maybe you gotta pick it up and bring it closer.
Is that, good. My name is Ken Gifford. I'm a resident of Sleepy Hollow Lake. I'm currently serving as first vice president of the Association of Property Owners Board of Directors. I have a procedural question. I'd like to step outside of the 3-minute limit if I may ask the esteemed council here tonight. Although there are no members attending tonight, they are to read this record that you're talking about. How do they take our input? Is it just reading? Is it recording? They're not here to hear us.
It's doing both.
You're doing both. Okay. I'm going to give you just a brief history, and 3 minutes are going to be tough because you need to understand the context in which we were speaking here tonight. When this project involved Hecate, which would be probably considered later, the Flint line came up, we immediately appointed a solar committee of people that had backgrounds in finance, energy, engineering, and so forth. And we took it seriously, so seriously, as a matter of fact, we spent a lot of money preparing for this out of our own funds. As you may know, Sleepy Hollow Lake is our reservoir. We drink that water as well as recreate in it. We were not opposed to this. We had quite a bit of management within our community to deal with about the issues that people were concerned about the change in land use, the visual impacts, and less so with the engineering side of it. We were more concerned with the engineering. I think of all the interveners, before you're a board member, an intervener is someone that's actually gotten funds from the proponents, in this case, Flint Line Solar. We got a modest less than $20,000 to cover our cost of doing it. Everybody else hired lawyers. My apologies, Mr. Golden, but that was the case. We hired scientists and engineers. You'll hear from Al Kaplan, who's our chair. Al and I have extensive background in economic development. I ran the SUNY's office for planning for years. So we've been involved in a lot of state projects. And with the power line coming up, the CX extract, and the master plans that were put together by NYSERDA and others, it was apparent we were going to get it. And we weren't going to stand here and try to be opposed to it. And we're still not. We want to make that very clear. What we were concerned about, though, was the impact on our water body. And frankly, if it's done well, and I still believe this could be a net benefit to our lake rather than a deterrent. The big question, if it's done right, and we have a lot of indications right now that that's not happening, okay? Or it's a potential. Sunday's Time June had an extensive article on the shortage of staff with the number of people that are trying to hook into the system, the power grid system, but more importantly to us as DEC, who did a magnificent job in reviewing this application and making things work. Now we have vast changes, maybe up to $100 million being removed from the project, different components in it from what we were told. We've already spent all of our intervener funds and considerable of our own dollars, and now all of a sudden we've got new projects to evaluate. So in essence, we're starting from scratch again to reevaluate this with no money. And that's going to be the issue tonight, is our funding, our modest request for funding of this. We've spent over $2 million in the last 6 years on our lake. About 35% of that was in preparation of these projects coming. And technical information were given to the solar proposals. We've met with them numerous times. We actually helped them in some of the scientific aspects of getting ready to do this project after all we built in it. And we had some pretty good agreements. But that going forward, the Times Union said 20%, the DEC staff are not there since the 2000-2008 financial pandemic that occurred at that time, financial pandemic. And in that case, we're really concerned that there are enough people locked up for our interests. We stand alone in protecting this watershed. We do not believe the villages or towns around us are interested or qualified to do this. We hope DEC is there, but we can't count on it. So we believe it's our responsibility as fiduciaries to this reservoir to make the absolute engineering and science judgment throughout the design, construction, and then beginning of the operation of this to make sure it meets the things that we were told it's going to do, and we want to have that trust. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, you can give written comment also. So that-
I will submit a written document
Yeah.
tonight.
During the closing, during the entire comment period. Okay, so just don't be repetitive, but, you know, I know you felt you were cut off, and I just wanted to point that out.
I understand the format.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, John Van Buren.
Okay, thank you. Just to introduce myself, my name is John Van Buren. I live at 12 Rombones Lane. Officially, that's the address is Athens, but I actually live in the town of Coxsackie. I'm a retired professional engineer, and at one point in my career with Central Hudson, I was involved in planning, our planning department, and my duties included financial analysis of different options for generating or manufacturing, if you will, the energy that serves our community. As we looked at these, one thing we always took as a given was that we were going to pay taxes. We were going to contribute to the communities where we were going to be building our facilities. Remember, taxes. These people, and because of the way the laws are written, are allowed to bypass taxes. We're talking about payment in lieu of taxes. What you have in front of you is, from my understanding, the IDA did not take advantage of all the options they had to collect money from the developers of this facility. That means we are potentially shortchanged somewhat financially in our payment in lieu of taxes. And more specifically, this impacts the community I live in and the water source that we use for our drinking water in my household. The reservoir known as Sleepy Hollow Lake. We just want our fair share of financial support to monitor the runoff from these fields. And yes, we hope it will be significantly better than what's there. But if we don't check it, we don't know. And, you know, the people developing these facilities, first of all, you have to keep in mind, they're not providing a lot of jobs to our community. Once the construction's done, my understanding is there'll be a single employee for this whole facility. That's not real economic development in my mind. So I urge the IDA to reconsider and take a hard look at how much money they're getting as of the pilot and how they're allocating the funds, and make sure you do it on a fair basis. Thank you.
Janet Kaplan.
My name is Janet Kaplan. I am here as the president of the board of directors of the Association of Property Owners of Sleepy Hollow Lake. I apologize, I didn't know you were going to have a 10-minute or a 3-minute limit. I have a written statement which I'll give you, and I'll try to excerpt this as best I can and run on a little bit. We believe that the IDA recommendation deviates significantly from its own policies, and that their findings are made based using a number of inconsistent logic and incorrect statements. The draft findings set a precedent that benefits a large solar installation looking to blanket the county with 200,000 solar panels, creating only one permanent job, paying very little in property taxes compared to the actual value of the property. Doing this while Flint Mine will be using the property to generate approximately $20 million in revenue each year while threatening our reservoir. To us, this makes no sense. The IDA even acknowledges that the draft findings are a deviation from the IDA's uniform tax exempt policy and that the project will not have any long-term indirect or secondary economic benefits. Yet, the draft proposes to agree to a pilot that is well below established market value, well below the discounted normal tax rate, and even well below the controversial NYSERDA guidelines, which various towns are suing over now because they're too low. On top of that, the findings bear no relation to the IDA incentive policy for solar projects, including 30 years of tax breaks, while their policy requires 20 or 15 years. Based on the deviations, the draft also, beyond the deviations, the draft includes many statements that are contradictory or inaccurate. First and foremost, it states that no public investment is being made in Flint Mine. At the same time, it states that it's expected that Flint Mine will receive federal and state tax incentives that were not evaluated by the IDA. Considering that the project will be getting both a tax credit of around $80 million and a NYSERDA guaranteed price contract of around $100 million for its sale of its energy, it's puzzling why these massive subsidies were not taken into account in part of the decision. It also states, without any supporting backup, that 15 or 20-year pilot guidelines are not sufficient for solar projects. These are based on the IDA's familiarity with general financial performance for solar projects and current trends. Nowhere in its findings does it claim it has examined or reviewed Flint Mine's numbers. It's incongruous to say that the property tax payments have a solid positive impact on local governments. The recommended pilot is not only well below the level required under the county's solar pilot law. If this is adopted, the county will actually lose $5.4 million in the first year and lose a net $3 million overall. The findings further refer to Friends of Flint Mine as a local group that supports the project to evidence lack of public opposition. It's no secret Friends of Flint Mine is a group primarily made up of the landowners, brokers, and other parties expecting to financially gain from the project. It's less widely known, however, that Friends of Flint Mine is represented by the New York City and international law firm of Arnold & Porter. Arnold & Porter has 14 offices worldwide, hundreds of attorneys, and represents clients in the energy and the alternative energy field. As bad as this deal is, it creates a precedent for many other solar farms to come that is very disturbing. On top of the fact that the taxpayers of Greene County will be subsidizing this multi-billion-dollar non-taxpayer with local, state, and federal taxes we pay, Sleepy Hollow taxpayers and our drinking water get short shrift. I know you're going to cut me off, but let me just finish by saying what we're actually asking for. A further misstatement in the draft findings is that we're asking the IDA to divert funds from the towns or the school district for our request, and the excuse that we are not a municipality is used to explain this rejection. We have submitted proposals to the IDA to outline ways in which our monitoring needs could be funded without taking funds from municipalities and schools. Unfortunately, our proposals have been ignored. To be clear, what we are asking for is that as a condition of your decision to grant benefits to Flint Mine DE Shaw, you include a provision to require that the project developer owner help fund on-site monitoring and testing at our lake and reservoir in accordance with the budget we presented. We are asking the IDA, which is supposed to be a public benefit corporation, to work with the county's tax-paying citizens to prioritize clean drinking water over hedge fund profits and ensure that Flint Mine doesn't become Flint, Michigan, or Hoosick Falls. Thank you for your time and attention. And I'll submit a vote.
Al Kaplan?
So thank you for letting us appear tonight. Thank you, Chairman, and members of the IDA board, and you, April, and Renee, and Paul. Since Just found out that I only have 3 minutes. I'll diverge from this and I'll give you my written testimony. But essentially, one of the reasons we're here is we're here to protect our reservoir, because our reservoir is what we look at as the future for our children and our grandchildren, and it's currently our drinking water, and that's significant for us. In addition, we're very interested in the contribution that the Flint line is being asked to make, on behalf of the taxpayers and the pilot that's there. And we believe that we are being shortchanged. I won't review everything that everybody else has said, but let me just talk about what our concern is. We've been having discussions about our needs with all the parties that are here today. And as we've asked, we're being told, well, we should trust Flintline, and Flintline tells us that we should trust them. They're going to monitor the water, and we should trust what they say. Well, as Ken said, I've been around for a while. I worked in state government for 36 years, including working as a deputy commissioner for Governor Mario Cuomo, and as a deputy commissioner and deputy director of the division of budget for Governor Coxsackie. And one of the things that I've learned in my time in government is, yes, you have to have trust, but you also have to verify it. And the other part of it is, if the other party is pushing back against verification, you better be suspicious. And that's what's happening here. What we've heard from D.E. Shaw is trust us. And trust is an interesting concept, okay? And trust is a concept which says you can really believe what someone is saying, and you don't have to worry about what they're saying. But when it comes to our drinking water, we do have to worry about that. And it gives us pause when we begin to see what's happening here relative to this particular project. And other people have talked about it. The pilot is well below what has been used for some of the other solar projects already. It's well below that level. And at the same time, the sales tax and the mortgage recording tax benefits are there for Flintline when there are others that didn't receive those benefits. So when you talk about trust, we had asked Flintline to help us with our monitoring. We showed them what our costs were, we showed them what we were doing it for, and they refused to help us. And not only that, once the pilot was settled, and after the project was sold from Amber to D.E. Shaw, we begin to see that there are changes being made. And what are those changes? Now all of a sudden we see amendments to the project that even the Article 10 judge has said, let's hold off. We have some questions we have to answer here. So trust is important there, because this project is changing dramatically. It's changing from cables, on platforms or some underground, to adding 4 miles of buried cables underground, disturbing the earth, and 5 miles of 60-foot telephone poles with cables, also creating additional disturbances. So when you think about this platform of 200,000 panels that's gonna function like that table functions above that floor, so that now, instead of having the ground absorb the stormwater and the rainwater that's coming off, all of that's flowing off of those 200,000 panels. Well, that gives us pause as to what's going to happen when that water starts flowing towards our reservoir. and what that's going to do to our reservoir. So as I said, I'll give you, my full presentation. I want to be fair to everybody else here, but just one thing: we're all for solar energy. We understand the issues that farmers have, and we're grateful that they're going to be able to get some money out of this. And we're not saying stop this project, but what we are saying, let's do this right. Let's do it the right way. Let's make sure that Flint Mine is paying their fair share to the taxpayers of this county, for the taxpayers and our schools, and let's make sure that they're fair to our children and our grandchildren and our reservoir and our water supply. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Al. Our next speaker is Helen Morel, or Moret? Meyer? Meyer. Come on. Say it again, it's Helen Meyer?
Meyer, M-E-I-E-R.
Are you more comfortable sitting there?
Oh, I don't really care. I can talk anywhere.
Okay.
Come on up.
Come on. You wanna go up there?
Good evening, my name is Helen Meyer. Good evening, my name is Helen Meyer. I live at 580 Flint Mine Road. In case you're wondering where my, whoops, okay. All right. Good evening, Ms. Ernst and IDA members. My name is Helen Meyer, and I'm a resident of Coxsackie. My family supports solar power and the Flint Mine Solar Project. Many of the farmers in the area have worked their whole lives to make a living off the land that is not profitable for farming. Most of you have lived and worked in Greene County your whole lives and are aware that 60 years ago, there were several dairy farms in the area. The land was suitable at that time for growing hay to feed the cows. The cows are gone, and so is the dairy farming industry in Greene County. Putting solar on the land will allow it to be used not just productively, but in a clean and sustainable manner. The project will bring revenue to the towns, school district, fire department, and the county, as well as to the landowners and the businesses. We ask the IDA to support the Flint Mine Solar Project and to provide its approval this year. These are very uncertain times, and we need to eliminate barriers to these projects coming online as quickly and efficiently as possible. I don't believe my 3 minutes is up.
You don't have to
Do
keep
you
speaking.
feel that I should answer the lake questions?
You've got 3 minutes, so yours to say as you were going.
All right.
No, one minute. That's right.
It is my understanding that Sleepy Hollow Lake feels that it is entitled to a large share of the pilot money expected from Flint Mine Solar. As a member of the community, I would like you to take the following facts into consideration. Sleepy Hollow Lake is within the confines of both Coxsackie and Allen's. It is a neighborhood, not a town. Sleepy Hollow Lake does not have its own school district, fire department, library, or EMS service. In fact, it does not provide any public services to either town or for themselves. Yet, Sleepy Hollow Lake benefits from the services provided by both the towns of Coxsackie and Allen's. It is not the responsibility of the towns to keep Sleepy Hollow Lake clean and pristine for the people who choose to live there. It is a man-made lake and therefore subject to the same water purity problems that the rest of the country faces during the present climate change period. The residents of Sleepy Hollow Lake do not allow any outsiders, townspeople from Coxsackie or Hamlets, to use the lake, pool, or beach, or any of the facilities enjoyed by the residents of the closed community. They do allow homeowners guests, as is their right. In conclusion, I do not feel that Sleepy Hollow Lake is entitled to any of the pilot funds. Thank you.
Okay, so the next person, you wrote a question mark, so Scott Nemacher. Did you want to speak?
Yeah.
And you want to, okay, I'll circle back. James Julie Furman, would you like to speak? Okay. David Unger. I have questions. This is David Unger.
I live at 689 Sleepy Hollow Road. So as a resident of Sleepy Hollow, yes,
This is David Unger.
David Unger.
Thank you.
I just wanted to voice a few concerns. The first, there are no members of the IDA board here, which gives me a little pause because by my count, there's something like 60 people in the audience, which your attorney said was more people than have been here since the Athens generating plant, which kind of indicates a lot of significance in terms of what the community feels.
That's not what I said. I said there were a lot of people here. So don't paraphrase my statements.
You did mention the generating plant, but that's okay.
I just don't paraphrase my statements. Thank you.
Pardon me. I simply want to point out that this is important, and I hope that the board takes the time to review this carefully. A couple of quick things. In my reading and listening to what's going on here, I'm not sure why the IDA would grant a longer pilot payment than the statute calls for, or value the property below what other projects are paying. Your responsibility is to we taxpayers, and you don't seem to be by these decisions, if that's what ultimately happens. It doesn't appear that you have the taxpayers' interest in mind. The town can benefit, and the school districts can benefit much more by a less liberal interpretation of the policies. In addition, the project is now owned by D.E. Shaw, who bought it this year. When they bought the project, obviously they evaluated it, and they bought it based on the approvals that had happened, and why we are now going back. I mean, obviously they considered the project viable if they purchased it. It cost a lot of money. Why go back now and redo the project other than to try to save money? Obviously, if the project was viable when they purchased it at the conditions that they purchased it in, it can be approved that way. I don't object to solar. I think solar is great. Lastly, the woman before me said that the Sleepy Hollow was asking for lots of the pilot payment money or something to that effect. I think Sleepy Hollow is asking for $50,000 annually to test the water to make sure that drinking water for us in the village of Athens, for which we are the backup water supply, is safe. And that seems to me to be a small price to pay for conditions that we did not cause. I mean, this is caused by a project, and my feeling is it should be paid for that project, by that project.
Thank you.
Would Jane Houston like to speak?
but considering the prior one said that Sleepy Hollow Lake doesn't contribute anything to the towns, and I'm about ready to pay my school tax, and I pay my county, my own town tax. I always pay it. I also have to pay dues to the community. And guess what? The town taxes the community. In addition to the fact that I got to pay taxes and the fact that I'm a member of that community. So I'm back tax double. And now I'm going to find out that the solar company, which is fine, solar's good, doesn't have to care about what goes into my reservoir. And I think the community is just looking for some extra money to make sure that our reservoir is safe. And that my kids, my grandkids, someday won't be drinking water that's fouled by soil. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you said, I still okay. Do you want to speak? I saw.
Oh, Jean Unger, come on up. Thanks.
So I'm Jean Unger, 689 Sleepy Hollow Road. I'm not a member of the board. I'm just a person who lives in Sleepy Hollow Lake that's here to ask for funding so we can protect our water supply. Your statement of findings denies that request because we are not a public taxing authority. But when it comes to clean water, Sleepy Hollow Lake is a vital part of the public watershed, and every action taken in the watershed is interconnected. From Coxsackie happens to Sleepy Hollow Lake, to the Hudson River, and on. Our lake has experienced blue-green algae blooms for 3 of the last 4 years. One of the most significant sources of these blooms is the nutrient-rich runoff and sediment flowing into the lake from surrounding areas and farm fields. A factor that will always be beyond our control without a unified regional effort. Flint Mine Solar will be clearing, excavating, and grading soil on hundreds of acres of land in our watershed. What they do directly affects us, and as Sleepy Hollow serves as drinking water, as well as backup water for the village of Athens, it's essential that we monitor, test, and work to mitigate any negative effects from these projects. The IDA's findings provide community host fees to the citizens of Coxsackie and community host fees to the citizens of Athens. Of the 2,000 plus citizens of Sleepy Hollow Lake whose drinking water is most at risk have been completely ignored. The IDA's report does not even address the necessity of Flint Mine completing a satisfactory stormwater pollution prevention plan. Sleepy Hollow Lake is a community of people who enthusiastically support the business, service, and cultural organizations of our communities. We are significant contributing taxpayers who in return make few demands on municipal services because we also fund our own sewer, water, public safety, administration, and roads. Frankly, I don't understand why the IDA and our own municipalities would not join us and insist on the need to ensure clean and safe drinking water for all. In this proposal, the IDA offers millions of dollars in property tax savings, county sales and use tax exemptions, and mortgage recording tax exemptions to Flint Mine Solar, a group of outside corporations that have no ties to our communities, doesn't commit to hiring local employees during construction, and brings just one full-time job here with a 30-year life project.
Well,
Oh,
two things.
sorry.
You're out of time, but if you could submit your writings, please, so I can put them in with the stenographer, that would help.
Yeah, and, you know, some of the stuff is getting a little repetitive, it's been the same stuff, but, you know, just, you can submit it in writing too. It's all gonna be consistent.
I will do that. I would just like to say that the proposed changes, the amendment changes a lot of what was approved, and I would hope you would delay any financial commitment until those issues are resolved. And I also hope you will consider Sleepy Hollow Lake, giving them the money. You've set up a compliance monitor escrow fund for Athens and Coxsackie to hire outside contractors. You could do the same for Sleepy Hollow Lake, so we could hire an outside consultant to monitor the water. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Greenwald. Barbara, I can hear you.
No, I'll do it right. I'm reading.
Only because she needs to hear also.
My name is Barbara Brunel. I actually was a resident of Coxsackie for more than 30 years. This evening, I'm reading a letter written by my great niece, Jennifer Bachman, who is currently a resident of Coxsackie, Greene County. As a 30-year-old, she is concerned with the future of the planet. She supports solar power projects in the area, specifically the Flint Mine solar installation. Flint Mine is a well-planned and thoughtful installation. They have been careful not to disturb the surrounding areas, while still saving plenty of the land for wildlife. It is our understanding that Coxsackie was once known as a mushroom farming area where they would grow in large warehouses, not in the fields, as well as for dairy farms. All these farms are now gone. With all this land no longer in use, solar seems like a perfect alternative to make the land productive again. With your help, it will also bring much needed revenue into the area. She would like to ask the IDA to support the Flint Mine solar project and provide its approval this year. This has been 7 years. The climate is becoming more and more unstable. It is urgent that we do something immediately and get these projects into operation as soon as possible. Thank you. Who's next,
Randall?
I'm gonna talk about that.
That's fine. Maybe take this microphone. I think it's loud.
Is the sound, can you hear me?
I can.
So my name's Randall Smallinger. I got started with Flint Mine Solar about 7 years ago. As my mom said, we've been at this for 7 years. People tonight have talked about verifying trust. I don't know what more they can do than be here and keep showing up to these meetings for 7 years to earn y'all's trust. All due respect to the residents of Sleepy Hollow Lake, I don't remember seeing any of you at the meeting 7 years ago where I heard a 90-year-old farmer say that he was going to be able to retire because of the money given by Flint Mine Solar. I don't remember any of you at the meeting where I heard from a lifelong mortgage adjuster how this is going to raise home prices in the area. And now y'all want to come in and say 7 years later, oh, well, we're entitled to this money, and maybe you are. That's a legal question, but it seems to me that you should, if you want to show up and say you're part of the community and say all this, you should show up at some point within that 7 years. And you said that you spent $2 million already on scientists and engineers, and now you're asking for more money. And not just that, you're asking for money from Flint Solar. Well, it seems to me that you might have misspent that $2 million. And I don't know what to tell you, it's buyer's remorse, I guess. So I know I'm probably pissing a lot of you off, and I don't, I got no quarrel with y'all, but that's my 2 cents on the matter, and thank y'all for listening. Sure.
So the last speaker I have on this list is Richard Garvey.
My name is Richard Garvey, and can you hear me? That's good?
Yeah, hold it.
My name is Richard Garvey. I'm a contractor out of Coxsackie on Bailey Street. And basically, I've done some work for Flint Mine, and I've met a lot of the landowners. And from my dealings with them, they've been nothing but ethical, professional. So I can only assume, that's how they conduct their business. But I'm in favor of the solar project.
I'm just going to circle back to the people who said they might want to speak at the end. And that would be Scott Lamancha.
Sure. Is that good?
Perfect.
Okay. My name is Scott Lamancha. I live at 54 Manhattan House Drive. I'm another Sleepy Hollow person. So you're hearing from another Sleepy Hollow person. I think, to address one of the questions raised by the prior speaker, it seems that since this project was initially proposed and went through a lot of the meetings and things, it sounds like it's been changed fairly radically since, our people did the analysis. And as a result, I think this is maybe a reaction to all of those changes that have occurred recently to the project. And I'm going to just address one, you may dismiss it if you want, one kind of that hasn't been raised here, because drinking water is a very important thing to consider. But for those of us in Sleepy Hollow and on any lake in New York State, in particular, that is enduring something called blue-green algae, which essentially closes down the ability to use a lake. You can't swim in it, you can't fish, you can't boat, you can't do anything. And in recent years, Sleepy Hollow Lake has been suffering from periodic bouts of blue-green algae. And it's a result of phosphorus coming into the lake, as well as perhaps, and there's some people here who I'm sure know more about it than I do, but phosphorus from fertilizers, phosphorus from the ground and the like, that even though our water is drinking water qualified, it still has phosphorus enough in it to create this problem. And to the extent that this project ends up disturbing the land and providing a greater source of phosphorus flowing into the lake, it's the kind of problem that could essentially eliminate the ability to use the lake for extended periods of time. And for all of the homes on the lake, you might say, well, gosh, they can't boat, they can't fish, but it's a very important aspect to the economics of Sleepy Hollow and the economics of this area. As prices go down, so do taxes. And Sleepy Hollow pays more than its fair share of taxes, I think, to the town. I know I pay a lot of taxes to Athens and others to Coxsackie, depending on where you are relative to the line. So I wanted to just add that one aspect to this discussion.
So the last person to circle back to James and Julie Furman, would you like to speak? Okay, thank you.
We got two people here that want to speak. No, no problem. I see you.
Okay.
Do you want to speak, ma'am? Come on up.
Did you sign in?
I did sign it,
Okay.
but I did not indicate I was
That's
speaking
fine.
until I heard from
Here.
certain people.
Wait, one sec. I just need your name.
Hi, Patrick. Hi, I'm Carol Metz. I live at 1381 Sleepy Hollow Road. And yes, I am a member of Coxsackie and Sleepy Hollow Lake. I say Coxsackie first because I am a resident of Coxsackie. And I support many businesses in Coxsackie through restaurants, landscapers, everyone who works at people's homes. We support more industry. I think that Flint Mine would be supported. And I also want to say, we are a part of Coxsackie, like I said before, and our taxes do contribute. And yes, we should help your fellow man and women in helping our water to stay safe, like drinking water. So please, give us some support in making it safe throughout the years. Again, I didn't have anything prepped, but certain people inspired. Thank you very much.
I still love you.
We should put that in the record.
That's right.
Can keep your voice.
Chris Garvey, 3195 Sleepy Hollow Road. I've been here for about 31 years on a piece of lakefront. And I'm really sorry that the lake is not available to the public. And I propose to my colleagues here that we make it open to the public at least once in a while, one day a year or something. One day a week, beach, pools, etc. I am embarrassed that Sleepy Hollow has come forward this way and has not informed the people who live in Sleepy Hollow what Sleepy Hollow has actually done to address the problems with the blue-green algae in the lake. Sleepy Hollow has a fabulous program underway that has been fully approved and fully funded to pay attention to the runoff into the lake, which is primarily from our lawns and possibly from an adjacent farm, which is not part of the Flint Mine project. The Flint Mine project is out near Route 9W. It is not anywhere near the lake. There is one stream that runs into the lake from the Flint Mine properties. So I hope that is being taken into account when my colleagues ask you for, I've heard up to $200,000 a year. Or I've also heard $100,000 a year. I have never seen a breakdown of the use of this considerable amount of money on a yearly basis. I, for one, would volunteer to go and take water samples in the entire lake once a week, if that would help with this considerable bill or amount that you're proposing that would come from the project. Anyway, I worked at the United Nations for 31 years, and my goal when I retired was to learn to install solar panels. I believe such naivete, but I didn't manage to learn that yet. I support solar 150%. If there's anything I can do to help this project go forward, I'm ready to do it. 2 hands. Anyway, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I support you 150%. Thank you.
Richard Greene. I'd just like to say that, Sleepy Hollow Lake, the people that live on Sleepy Hollow Lake, a good percentage of them do not live here all year round. They come from Connecticut, they come from Massachusetts, they come from other areas. They are good. Sleepy Hollow Lake is a good rateable for the community. These people that do not live here, they don't have kids in school, so there's no need for, so they're actually, good rateables for this community. And I think we're being unfair to us, like we're some evil people that are a big burden on the community. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you very much.
At this time, does anybody else want to speak?
Are we allowed to do follow-up?
Yes?
Just keep it,
3 more minutes? We can give you
Yeah,
3 more
that's
minutes.
Ken Gifford, to the record of my address. A couple of just quick things, okay? Not wanting to offend anybody, but the money we've spent, the $2 million I spoke about 30% of that's gone specifically to address watershed management. And the Flint Mine project does feed into Murderkill Creek, which is 48% of our flow that's into the body of water. So we've already done the science here, and we've shared this with all the solar proposals. They have all of our engineering data. They can call us, talk to our experts at any given time. Secondly, we're about 25% of tax base here. We're like a shopping center or a major warehouse of Stodat. We contribute 25% generally across the board here of the revenue. And we take very little service. We pay fire districts, we pay the library, we pay for these other things. We cooperate with public safety for EMS and other services and the fire services. We have a very close relationship. We send 14% of the enrollment to this district. We provide 25% of the revenue. So to the gentleman's point earlier, we are a net benefit, and we are not opposed to the solar. We've been fighting to work to get this thing done and get it done right. We're just raising the simple question, and I know I'm repeating myself, but it bears repeating, is to buy the right kind of help to go forward with this. We've already spent a lot of our money doing this. We need a little bit of help. We're not being greedy and looking for millions of dollars. We're looking for a simple, even a compromise to go forward on this, to make this happen, to make sure it's safe. To Al Kaplan's point, it's about trust. We had a lot of trust, and we still do, with the good people that are involved here. But we're dealing with brand new people. This is what happens here. These things do flip. We have a huge hedge fund worth $166 billion. We got $20 million a year of before tax benefits. We got about half the project being supported by state funds and grants. There's a huge amount of money we've also paid as New York State taxpayers to make these projects possible. Again, no opposition to the solar or this project being done and being done on a timely way. As I said before, done right, we're all going to benefit. This is a win-win, folks, but it's got to be done right. That's the simple bottom line. But we also, as taxpayers of Greene County, ask you to look at your percentages of how you're looking at the pilot and how it's going to affect things like the school district over a period of time that Al mentioned. Look how it affects the county in terms of how it gets paid. We think there's a little bit more wealth here that can be spread around that we respectfully, because you have an important job, an important part of the community, and we respect you. We ask you to reopen this and let us talk. You'll find considerable data and analysis that we provided. And for us to hear the statement that but for this project or these incentives, this project's not possible, show me the income statement you reviewed to make that one. Thank you.
Anybody else? And before you leave, if you did want to submit your letters in writing, please do so. At this time, I'm going to turn the mic over to my consultant, Renee Shack.
Good evening, everybody.
So I guess what I think is important here first, like Mr. Gifford gave his qualifications, I'd like to, some of you in the room know me. I know there's a few people that know me for a while, and I've had a whole lot of people who don't have a clue who I am, except for some guy with a grizzly beard. So let me tell you about who I am and my background. So I was the executive director of the County Soil and Water Conservation District here in Greene County for over 20 years. In 1989, 1990, Sleepy Hollow Lake approached me in that capacity to help them work on sediment erosion control problems within Sleepy Hollow Lake. To help any of you out there with the math, that's 32 years ago. For 32 years, so let me tell you what I did for Sleepy Hollow Lake in my capacity, both as soil and water and later as a private consulting individual. I first lobbied very hard to get them on the priority water bodies list, or PEC, which made them eligible for a whole ton of grant money. To Scott's comment earlier, well, I wish you were there like 25 years ago when I was having the argument with the town supervisors about the importance that $1 million home on Christine Lake turned into $100,000 homes on a pond. So the concept of lake quality to equity has been addressed before. I got them their first grant to stabilize drainage ways. So those rock line drainage ways that you have, that's a result of the work that I did to get you grant money, which was because we were able to get you on the PWL list, which made you eligible to get that grant in the first place. And try to teach, and then additionally to that, I actually physically taught your operators, your manpower workforce, how to run excavators, and how to run bobcats, and how to properly shape stream channel, because I have a very extensive background in stream science and stream restoration, okay? In addition to that, I raised money for doing seeding demonstrations at Sleepy Hollow Lake. I raised money under demonstration projects to try to stabilize the waterways. When Athens Generated Power Plant came into play, and again, I was with the Soil and Water District, the IDA, everybody wasn't listening to Sleepy Hollow Lake. Sounded like the same thing I'm hearing now. And I, at the time, said, well, you know what, the air quality emissions is a tricky animal. So maybe there's something to be said here. So I went and pulled my favorites in line and gave Sleepy Hollow Lake and got them a sizable donation up front. And I also set Sleepy Hollow Lake up with a monitoring plan, very rigid lake monitoring plan. We're not talking citizen science, no disrespect to Chris, but good monitoring data can't be citizen science. We set up an EPA level approved monitoring plan with qualified professionals that did the monitoring on behalf of Sleepy Hollow Lake to develop this baseline. Anybody in the room, raise your hand if you know that you have that. You were on the board, you were on the chairman of the board, you were on the board there when we did that work. So that's the only other guy on Mike Corona knows my longest to do that. So we did that on purpose so that you would establish a scientific record of the lake that would be recognizable 20 years later. You couldn't say this is what the phosphorus levels of TSS and suspended solids were because Christine Garber or any one of your citizens went. This was done by, in fact, guess who that qualified person worked for? Greene County Soil and Water, who absorbed the bill to send that person out. I think we did it for 5 years to build the baseline. There's other things that I missed here in this point. Oh, I wrote the first lake management plan. Sorry, I forgot about that. Isn't that interesting? About watershed management. So if you will note, given my background, in my work to write the signing statement, I purposely did not address any of the environmental issues and claims or otherwise by Sleepy Hollow Lake. Even though I have with all due respect to everybody in the room, I have a far greater wealth of experience and knowledge pretty much anybody here knows. I've been working on it a long time. Ken knows that. But just that is not our role. Article 10 process, there are more environmental agencies than I can even remember to name to you. And it's their responsibility to go through and do that. So a couple of people have brought up tonight the changes in the project, the potential impacts of this project. So the projects that put forward the part of the PSC initially was thoroughly vetted. Was thoroughly vetted by the PSC and the regulatory agencies. There was stipulations agreements. Those stipulation agreements were signed to buy Sleepy Hollow. But let's forget that for a minute. Now we're talking about change. I've seen that. I forgot you. I believe you, Al, said that I read the judge's order on the changes. Sometimes people assume we don't look at stuff, but we do. I looked at it. I thought it was very thorough. I thought the judge made very good points. I think the judge says basically, we determined in the initial project that as laid out was not an impact on Sleepy Hollow. You've proposed changes. and we think that those changes need more than a week and a nod to be reviewed to see if there's further additional environmental problems. The way the system works for all the lay people in the room, the people that make the mitigations and the requirements and all the rest of that are the environmental agencies you have to go to permit. I have written more permits in my career of 36 years doing environmental work in this county than you can shake a stick at. And if you would like a clue for how many millions I've had to spend to get those permits and meet those conditions. We are comfortable, and we are more comfortable and confident that those changes are going to go to the PSD. The regulatory agencies are going to review them in the context of the additional disturbance and whether it will or will not have an impact. And I would definitely encourage Sleepy Hollow to encourage to monitor that situation. Okay. Now, all that being said, there are other couple comments that I want to make here, because first is every comment that's in here tonight will have a detailed written response to. I will ask you, you took the time to come here tonight, you come here tonight to hear the questions. In some cases, I would almost call them allegations. I would ask you respectfully, when the comments come out, to take 5 minutes and read the summary. Okay? Because while you want us to respond, like that's a two-edged sword. This idea with the finding statements we post on the website is probably, I will tell you, I'd be willing to bet my career, it's the most transparent in New York State. We share information we don't have anything. So I would ask you respectfully, as a resident of this community, since birth, myself, that when those come out, that you please look at that. Public hearings are not meant to be a give and take back and forth, but I have to ask two things of two individuals that spoke comments tonight. First is, let's see if I got my first page, John Van Buren. John, you made some allegations, or you made some, maybe we should call it allegations. You made some points.
Allegations on
You contention. So I just ask you, please, to put those contentions specifically in writing, so that we can address them specifically. I don't think it's fair to leave an open question that the IDA didn't consider everything it should consider, to leave all these people going out of the room with that question, yet not put the specific, because I'm not sure what you're talking about, and I've been doing this for 36 years. So I would ask you to please clarify that, okay? Janet, likewise with you. Your letter, and I haven't set your written response yet, but your contention is that there are a lot of incorrect statements, and otherwise, they can only be considered whether they're incorrect if we know what they are. Okay? So if you feel that's the case, then I would tell you that we would ask you to follow through on that and lay them out in writing, so that all these people later will hear about these contentions that right now are ghosts in my mind. All right, so I didn't know we had seen your letter yet, so we will address all of those at the point we can. We're not going to get into the pilot split and everything, but a number of people here have noted tonight that the pilot number on itself at 5,000 megawatt, which is the pilot number, was not adequate. I guess I got to ask you, what's your basis of your information on that? I have been monitoring solar pilot projects for 12 years. I thoroughly researched the internet, I thoroughly watched projects, and I think that if you yourself would take some time, or have someone take some time, that you would find that two things. All solar projects are not alike. You cannot treat the project we did on 9W across with Pegasus, that is much smaller, is selling to, is it what we call a community solar? Are people familiar with the concept of community solar versus utility? Community solar projects sell a couple of things. They sell at the retail market price versus wholesale market for these guys. They have long-term power purchase agreements. They don't even build it until they have somebody buying power for a term of contract. They have a whole term, but good enough to make the bills paid. These guys don't have power purchase agreements. They look at the ISO internet intervals every 10 minutes. ISO determines what electricity they will buy electricity and put it to the grid from Japanese. Every 10 minutes, 365, 24/7. And that changes and fluctuates dramatically. What does that mean? Monster risk. Whereas I have I have a contract for 30 years versus I have risk. The economics are different. And there are some other advantages to community solar projects that new projects will not be able to take advantage with, and that has to do with some depreciation stuff and with some nice certain payments on equipment and stuff. The earlier projects that they have gotten that, new ones in the future won't, but they've enjoyed incentives that the large solar projects don't get, okay, on that. So there's definitely differences of scale. So while the county and all of us, if you look at the county adopted a law at 8,900. The IDA did the one community project at 8,000. So we're pretty close to that. We're splitting hairs. So we've been trying to be supportive of being there. If you were to look around the state at this point, at the large projects that are out there, the typical asking price that they're coming in at is in $2,100 to $2,500 a megawatt. The sweet spot where most negotiations seem to be landing, and according to the town supervisor in town of Flint, a recent project up there, they've settled on 3,500 megawatt per 50. Okay. The recent Mohawk, a big project, 90 megawatts, that is the first large solar project approved in New York State, by the way. It hasn't started yet because of complexities of panels and et cetera. They're at about $33,333 a megawatt. The largest payments in the state that I can find are 5,000 a megawatt. That's what we're charging. Here's what, in other parts of the state, the 5,000 a megawatt, each one of them includes a community host fee. It's part of that. Whether it's 30-year, there's some lump sum or whatever. Those larger ones have a community host fee. In this case, the community host fee is another 4,000 a megawatt on top of the 5. So effectively, the combined effective rate of the host fee and the host community fee and the pilot here is $9,000. The highest rate I can find in the state is 5,000. We're getting 9. So again, I would ask anybody who's challenged our numbers and where we get more to be very specific, because if anybody here's known me long time, if I'm wrong, I have no problem. Okay? But we stand by that research on those numbers and where they're going and what those pilot amounts are. As far as consideration of federal tax credits, did you also notice that in our finding statement that we do not discuss the impact on the state? We take sales tax and mortgage tax around the state. We don't want to discuss it. You know why? Because we're not, first of all, I'm not going to say we don't care, but our constituents are you guys. What's the impact right here within Greene County's borders? The second reason we don't do this, because any pro forma, any analysis such as this should be highly reliable and verifiable. Well, here, guess what? I can't verify. I can verify that they have a potential sales tax loss of the next, and a mortgage tax loss of this, but I can't verify what they gain in this case. That might be a great example. What do they gain in employment tax? What do they gain in corporate tax? What do they gain in fees? And if anybody's seen what goes on around here, one thing New York State likes to do is collect a hefty fee from big projects. So we're not privy to that. We don't know the revenue stream, the benefit stream to the feds or the others. So we don't analyze it. If you are in Sleepy Hollow Lake and you're worried about the impact on the federal budget because of a project Greene County IDA is doing, I don't know how to answer that. I really don't. So I think let's pull in some other points. I think that really kind of hit on some things that I wanted to really kind of mention up front. We will be continuing to watch the changes proposed in front of PSC. We will, so I also want to note that the IDA board won't take any action before November's board meeting. We have to get comments in. We want to give everybody a chance to get in. We got to get the stenographer record in. So there won't be any action, prior to that time. We will be monitoring, we will be watching, and we will see where it goes with the PSC and further impacts. I'll close by just asking you to remember my background with Sleepy Hollow Lake and my experience and knowledge of land use issues, land use issue impacts, and other things. It's not my role as a consultant, though I would almost welcome the IDA giving me an assignment to have a response to the environmental question here, but that's not my job. That's not the IDA's job. Okay, their job is to look at environmental impacts, and if we do our own project, build a business park and or otherwise, we do see it. And it's hard. We sit in that chair for a period of time, like they do, and we have to do the mitigations. And if you want to come look at our budget sometime, see how much money Greene County IDA has spent on building wetlands and other things here in Greene County, well above your buildings, well above. So that's the last comment I have. I would ask, please provide us more clarity, because I want to be very clear that we answer anybody's questions that they think something was done wrong. I am not afraid to hide from that. The IDA is not afraid to hide from that. And to what Paul's noted earlier, I've never been afraid of creating a solid public record. In fact, I think it's important. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I am the collector of documents. If anyone wants to give me documents, I'll take them, and then I'll just log them in. And thank you very much. I learned a lot. I have not really been part of any of the back and forth here, so I know nothing of it. And I'm glad to see the community. I think it's important. I would just urge you to speak to each other, speak to the applicant about what your problems are, because ultimately, you know, you guys are going to run this community. These people have certain needs they express it, whether they're real or not. I'm trying to figure that out. But I would invite you, because if you are part, I've been blessed by being allowed into this community as a attorney for the IDA for almost 25 years, you know. And I would encourage you guys to speak to these people about, they have legitimate issues, and you have legitimate needs. So I would encourage you guys to start having a dialogue, and we can promote that. You know, I certainly would be able to do that. Now, what I typically like to do with finding statements is I take the comments, I respond to them. I have to have one here that I'm working on another context. But we take this stuff seriously. Okay, this is not a joke. This is, you know, important to you people, and it's important to you guys. So we're going to take the time to look at it. I can only say it's not a fait accompli. The board is going to look at it. I represent the board, and we're going to do a good job. You may not agree with what we say, but I will tell you, I'm going to spend time on it personally. Thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Again, you know I support.
I'll be posting this online tomorrow.
I've been there, right?
Okay.
Again, you know I support.
Thank you.
Can you get me? Can I get you what? I'm trying. So I'm having people hand in the comments and then I'll forward them over to you. Okay? And the sign-in sheet. Yep. I'll PDF it to you in the morning. Okay? Thank you.